This is my story of how I came out. This story begins about 7 years ago. I was a teenager wrestling with sexual feelings I had. So for most of 2006, I thought of myself as being bisexual because I was not yet comfortable with the thought of being gay. A lot of that had to do with religious guilt. I was a conservative Christian at the time, so that influenced how I thought about sexuality. Suffice to say, I thought homosexuality was a sin and I would be going to hell. It was in early 2007 where I came out to myself. I just remember quite clearly lying in bed, just thinking about all of this. I just looked up at the ceiling and thought to myself, I'm gay. I just had this huge sense of relief. I'd always felt guilty about not dating any girls, not being interested in women. It made me feel very insecure. Knowing I liked guys, everything just began to click. While I had acknowledged to myself that I was gay, I was not prepared to tell my parents, and more importantly, people at my high school. So I tried very hard to stifle my mannerisms, to try to be as masculine as possible, or to appear that way. I was trying to pretend to be straight, or at the very least some asexual nerd that people would leave alone. I put so much energy into this so I could go through school unnoticed. The main obstacle to all of this was the fact that I was not interested in girls and made no attempt to pretend to do so. Many of my classmates were starting to date while I was not, and so I just tried to play the I'm a nerd card. It mostly worked, but it was really difficult to keep up. I moved to another school which wasn't that great in many respects, so I left after 3 months. I eventually managed to convince my parents to let me be homeschooled. I just couldn't take another minute at school being teased and taunted, being called gay. It was really beginning to wear me out. I just wanted to be able to learn in peace. The curriculum I enrolled in was IGCSE, which is the International General Certificate of Secondary Education, which was developed by the University of Cambridge International Examinations. I would be required to take 7 or so subjects, submit term, papers for each module, and finally take exams for all the subjects. I did this for 3 months, but then my mom got severely depressed, and I was told, well, in actual fact I was blamed, that this was because I was becoming increasingly withdrawn and I didn't have any friends. I did not want to tell my parents the reason for this. I did not want them to know that I was gay. I was sure this contributed to her feeling depressed, but there were other reasons for this that were unrelated to me. Unbeknownst to me, my parents began looking for a school for me to be placed in, and they eventually found one. I remember that it was a Monday, and I was sitting in the study at my house working on my computer. My dad came in and told me that he found a school for me and that I would be going there on Tuesday. This was crushing to me because I knew that if these kids found out I was gay, they would make my life miserable. But there was nothing I could do. I had no choice. I was going to the school whether I liked it or not. I adopted my old strategy of just trying to go unnoticed. This was especially difficult at times, during times in the class where they would talk about sex. We have a subject in South Africa called life orientation, which is compulsory, so everyone had to take it. During these LO lessons, the talk would somehow manage to always divert back to me. They would ask me questions like, are you a virgin? Have you had sex before? I was so uncomfortable with this that I always offered to go and make photocopies for the teacher. I just tried to find some way of leaving the classroom when the issue of sex came up and to stay away for as long as I could. After about a year, later, I would say, I managed to convince my parents to let me be homeschooled again. The reason they let me do this was because I'd gotten my results back from my IGCSE exams and I had passed all my subjects. I refused to give it up and kept doing it even while I was at the school. Months later, I started to enter deep depression. I felt this was because now that I'd achieved my goal of leaving the school, I'd lost my sense of direction. Also, I felt I'd grown attached to these people. The person they liked was a fake. It was not the real me. I was pretending basically to be something I was not, to please other people, so they would like me. And I'd gotten so good at this that even I began to believe in it. I was depressed for other reasons too, but I think living this double life was taking its toll on me. During this time, I just wanted to die. I saw no future for myself and no reason to live. Just going through the day was an uphill battle. I just kept hoping I would get cancer or die in a car accident because I couldn't take life anymore. In June 2011, I decided to come out to my aunt, so I planned to meet up with her at the university where she worked. We spent time talking just general stuff. I kept thinking to myself, come on, say it, say it. When I finally did say I'm gay, she just looked at me knowingly and said, I know. Talk about buzzkill, I was hoping for some sort of drama and scandal. But I think she figured it out long ago. We just spent time talking. After that, I told her about how I feared my mother's reaction to coming out. And I cannot remember what she said verbatim, but what she told me was that it wasn't my burden to bear. If my mother had a problem with it, that was her problem. It wasn't mine. It wasn't my responsibility to change for other people, it was theirs. I must be myself, and I must not worry what other people thought. This was so liberating to hear that it took a huge weight off my shoulders. Sometime after that, I relapsed and I started to become depressed again. I was totally miserable and couldn't take this hell anymore. This went on into 2012. By April, I felt I was reaching the end of my ropes. I've been keeping this charade going for about 5 years now, and it needed to come to an end. I'd been watching hundreds of YouTube videos on coming out, but there was one YouTube comment left by someone that convinced me to come out. Excuse me. I cannot remember where on YouTube I saw the comment or what exactly it said, but what the person was saying, that coming out had made it easier to study at school, to study, just basically function in everyday life. That comment made a major impression on me, and I started to believe that coming out was beneficial to my health. I basically reasoned that whatever the consequence of coming out, it couldn't be any worse than what I was going through now. I decided one night in April to come out to my mom. It did not go according to plan because I couldn't even say the word gay. I essentially hovered around the kitchen trying to approach my mom, but nothing would happen. It was impossible for me to utter the words. It was so frustrating. On the 5th of June, I decided to try again. I took a piece of paper out of an examination pad and wrote, "Mom, I'm gay." I went into the garden and handed it to my mother. I then rushed off into the garage, got into my car to drive off to work. I could hear my mom screaming my name. I then got out of my car and spoke to her on the driveway. She asked me, "Are you gay?" I was like, "Yes, I am." "How do you know you're gay?" She asked me. That was one of the questions. And I was like, "Well, how do you know you're straight?" In the end, she said she would have to accept it, but I think it was very difficult for her at the time. I don't think it was something that would be easy for her. But I think she loved me, and, I drove off to work feeling euphoric that I'd finally told her and that my burden was over. She then phoned my dad and told him as well. I could see the look in his face, and I knew that he knew. I had to pick him up from work later, and he said to me, "Now Mum has told me that you gave her a note." I interrupted him and said, "I know what you're going to say." He said, "Well, maybe you should go see a therapist." He said that not meaning so I could be cured of my homosexuality, just so that I could deal with any issues I had. I feel I've bored you long enough, so I will end my story there. I assume most people watching this are looking for advice. All I can say is that I cannot give advice that will be appropriate for everyone's situation. I can only speak from personal experience. Knowing what I know now, I would have come out much, much sooner. I really wasted precious years of my life stuck in the closet. Second, most of my fears were unfounded, and people can surprise you. Coming out was one of the most painful things I've ever had to do, but it was one of the best things I've ever done. I came out because I reached a point where I didn't give a damn what anyone else thought. If someone disapproved of it, that was their problem, not mine. I no longer had to carry around other people's judgments. And that basically set me free. The journey to where I am sitting today was extremely painful, but in the end, I'm glad I did it.